September 27, 1944, 0730 hours. German Officer Candidate School, Metz, France. Oberleutnant Klaus Weber adjusted his collar in the mirror of Fort Driant's command post. Outside, concrete walls 3 feet thick absorbed the morning sun. Inside, 360 meters of interconnected tunnels, reinforced casemates, and 150-millimeter gun batteries hummed with confidence. Weber addressed his young officer candidates, former Navy men, Luftwaffe transfers, all of them fanatical believers in German engineering superiority. "Gentlemen," he said, lighting a cigarette, "the Americans are coming, and they're bringing their toys." Laughter rippled through the room. Weber held up an intelligence photograph. 2 GIs holding what looked like a drain pipe with a grip. "This is their bazooka, 2.36 inches, a hollow tube, costs them $25 to manufacture." He paused for effect. "Our engineers tested captured specimens. It can penetrate 3 inches of armor. Effective range, 300 yards. More laughter. "Fort Driant has walls 48 inches thick. Our gun positions are protected by 60 feet of interwoven barbed wire, a 60-foot dry moat, and overlapping fields of fire from 5 separate bunkers. This fortress has stood since 1902. No army has taken Metz by direct assault since 1552. He stubbed out his cigarette. "The Americans think they can breach this with sheet metal tubes and coat hanger wire sights. Let them try." What Weber didn't know was that 1,310,823 bazooka rockets would be fired in the European theater before war's end. Most of them wouldn't be aimed at tanks. What Weber didn't know would turn his fortress into a tomb. 8 weeks earlier. Aberdeen, Proving Ground, Maryland. 92 degrees Fahrenheit, air thick as syrup. Private First Class Danny Kovac wiped sweat from his eyes and lifted the M1A1 Bazooka for the 40th time that morning. 54 inches long, 12.75 pounds. Cold in winter, burns your hands in summer, kicks like a pissed-off mule when you fire it. "Again!" barked Sergeant Holbrook. "You think Fritz is gonna wait while you fumble?" Kovac loaded the M6A1 rocket, 3.5 pounds of pentalite explosive wrapped in a finned projectile. The loader, Private Jimmy Chen, slapped his shoulder. "Fire!" The rocket screamed downrange, punched into a concrete slab. Nothing. The concrete stood. Smoke curled. A chip fell off. "See that?" Holbrook said. "That's why intelligence says it's a tank killer, not a fort killer. The shaped charge needs distance to form properly. Too close, you get a firecracker. You tracking?" Kovac nodded, but his hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the 118th day of training. They'd been drilling since June. Bayonet charges against fake pillboxes. Bangalore torpedoes that broke apart. Flamethrowers that coughed and died. Pole charges that refused to stick to wet concrete. Every weapon in the arsenal designed to crack fortifications. Every single one inadequate. The Army trained 500,000 men to use the bazooka by war's end. Most thought they were learning to hunt panzers. They were wrong. August 5th, 1944. Utah Beach, Normandy. 1,500 hours. Patton's Third Army hit French soil like a freight train missing its brakes. Kovac landed with the 11th Infantry Regiment, 5th Infantry Division, 20th Corps. His bazooka team, 2 men, 1 weapon, 18 rockets split between them. "Listen up," Lieutenant Morrison said, rain drumming on his helmet. "Our job is breakout, fast and hard. Intelligence says Jerry's running. We're gonna keep him running." By August 20th, Third Army had covered 280 miles. The 81st Division crossed the Seine, Aube, and Marne in a single day. Then the gas ran out. September 3, 1944. East of the Meuse River. 400,000 gallons requested. 32,000 delivered. Patton's blitzkrieg ground to a halt 15 miles from the German border. And Hermann Balck arrived. Balck wasn't Blaskowitz. Blaskowitz had retreated. Hitler replaced him with a man who'd survived Stalingrad, who'd broken Soviet offensives on the Eastern Front, who believed defense could bleed attackers white. Balck dug in around Metz. 43 forts. Medieval walls reinforced with 20th-century concrete. Artillery positions that could hit American columns 6 miles away. He imported officer candidates from schools across Germany, young Nazis who'd fight to the last bullet. He pulled in Kriegsmarine sailors who'd never see their ships again. Luftwaffe ground crew with nowhere left to fly. And he told them all the same thing Weber told his men. The Americans have better logistics, better numbers, better air support, but they've never fought fortress warfare. Every meter will cost them blood. September 15, 1944, Third Army Intelligence Briefing. Captain Gerhardt spread aerial photos across the table. Fort Driant, built 1902. 4 artillery casemates, each with 3 guns, 100 millimeters and 150 millimeters. 5 bunkers, capacity 300 men each. Interconnected by tunnels deep enough to survive direct hits from our 240mm artillery. He tapped another photo. Surrounding defenses. 60-foot dry moat. Another 60 feet of barbed wire. 3 rows deep in some sections. Overlapping fields of fire. We tried bombing it with 1,000-pounders. Barely chipped the paint. Patton leaned forward. Ivory-handled pistols catching the light. And the garrison? Best guess? 200 to 300. Old men. Second-line troops. Patton's jaw tightened. How do we take it? Silence. Then a voice from the back. Bazookas, sir? Laughter. Nervous laughter. Patton didn't laugh. Explain. Shaped charges, General. They work on concrete, same as armor. We get teams close enough. Fire into the vision, slits and embrasures. Collapse the interior. Close enough? Someone interrupted. Those approaches are pre-sighted. Machine guns every 20 yards. You'd need to be suicidal. Or smart, the voice replied. That voice belonged to Captain Leslie Skinner's ghost, the ordnance officer who'd invented the bazooka in 1942 and died never knowing what it would have become. Because the bazooka wasn't designed for fortresses. But 1.3 million rockets don't lie. September 26, 1944. Night. American staging area. Kovac checked his rockets for the 100th time. M1A1. Improved over the original M6. Better fin stabilization. More reliable electric ignition. Still just a pipe, some explosives, and a prayer. Chen squatted beside him, loading ammunition bandoliers. You scared? Terrified. Good. Means you're smart. Thunder rolled across the sky. Not weather. Artillery. The 155mm howitzers opening up on Fort Driant, softening it for tomorrow's assault. Kovac knew the math. 3 inches of penetration. Fort walls 48 inches thick. It didn't add up. But orders were orders. And what Oberleutnant Weber didn't know, what none of them knew, was that American infantry didn't fight by the book. They improvised. September 27, 1944, 14:15 hours. The assault begins. P-47. Thunderbolts screamed overhead, engines howling, dropping napalm on Fort Driant's roof. 50-foot fireballs bloomed orange and black. The concrete didn't blink. Weber watched from his command post, binoculars pressed to his face. "Pathetic," he muttered. "They waste expensive aircraft on invulnerable positions." Then, the 155mm shells started landing. Each one weighed 95 pounds. Each delivered 70 pounds of TNT-equivalent explosive force directly onto pillbox apertures. The concrete absorbed them like raindrops. "See," Weber told his men, "American firepower is impressive, but firepower without penetration is just noise." At 14:45 hours, smoke canisters popped across the approach. Through the gray haze, Weber saw silhouettes, American infantry, moving in teams. He gave the order, "Fire." Machine guns opened up, MG-42S, firing 1,200 rounds per minute. The Nazis called it Hitler's buzzsaw. Americans called it Hell's lawnmower. Men went down screaming, not screaming. Tank destroyers rolled forward, M10S with 76mm guns. They fired point blank at pillboxes. Concrete chips flew. The pillboxes held. By 1800 hours, the assault stalled. Kovach's platoon had reached the barbed wire. That's where they stopped. Dead GIs hung on the wire like laundry. Chen threw up in his helmet. "Fall back!" Morrison shouted. "Fall back!" They withdrew under covering fire. Lost 63 men. Gained nothing. Weber lit another cigarette and smiled. "Tell Berlin the Americans tried. Tell them the bazooka is useless against prepared defenses." He was half right. The bazooka was useless the way they'd used it. But that was about to change. September 28, 1944. 3rd Army, HQ. Patton slammed his fist on the table. "We're not quitting." "Sir," Colonel Yule protested, "we lost a company trying to crack one fort. Metz has 43 of them. I don't care if it has 400. We put our hand to the plow. We finish." "How?" Patton's chief engineer, Colonel Wendell Lewis, cleared his throat. "Different tactics, General. We're treating these like tank battles. They're not. They're siege warfare." So we stop trying to break the forts. We infiltrate them." He spread blueprints across the table, captured French plans from 1918, hidden in Nancy during the German occupation. Fort Driant has 5 major weaknesses: vision slits for observation, ventilation shafts for air circulation, embrasures for the guns, doorways, reinforced, yes, but still entries, and tunnels connecting everything. Lewis tapped the ventilation shafts. "These are only 12 inches in diameter, but you know what fits in 12 inches. Silence. A Bangalore torpedo, or better yet," he pulled out a photograph of a bazooka. "This." "You're insane," someone said. "Bazookas are anti-tank weapons. The rocket needs distance to arm properly." "Who said anything about distance?" Lewis interrupted. "We're not shooting through the concrete. We're shooting into it, through the openings." He pointed at an embrasure, the narrow firing slit for a 150mm gun. 3 feet wide, 8 inches tall. You fire a bazooka rocket through that opening, it detonates inside the casemate. The shaped charge doesn't need to penetrate concrete. It just needs to penetrate air. And then the blast wave kills everyone in the room. The Germans designed these forts to keep explosions out. They never considered containing explosions in. Someone whistled. "There's more," Lewis continued. "Flamethrowers, not against the walls, against the ventilation. Pump burning fuel down the shafts. Force them to choose, suffocate or evacuate." "What about the tunnels?" "Satchel charges, 30-pound explosive packs. Plant them at tunnel junctions. Collapse the connections. Turn one fortress into 12 isolated rooms. Patton leaned back. Engineer units? 7th Engineer Battalion standing by, trained for demolitions. And sir, Lewis hesitated, we need volunteers. This is close quarters work. 10 feet from the enemy. No margin for error. You'll get them, Patton said. What the Germans expected. Massed assaults, overwhelming firepower, brute force. What they got. Scalpel teams with improvised tactics and $25 weapons. October 3rd, 1944. 1,000 hours. Second assault on Fort Driant. This time, no preliminary bombardment. No warning. Task Force Warnock, 10th Infantry Regiment, moved through the forest in silence. 40-degree morning, frost on the leaves, breath visible. Kovac carried his bazooka. Chen carried 6 rockets. Behind them, Sergeant Clecamp, 7th Engineers, with 60 pounds of satchel charges. Private Holmlund. Bangalore torpedoes strapped to his back. Captain Anderson, grenades clipped to every inch of his webbing. No one talked. At 10:45 hours, they reached the wire. Engineers went forward with cutters. Snip, snip, snip. German observers in the pillboxes saw nothing through the morning mist. By 11:30, 2 platoons had penetrated the wire. Weber was eating lunch when the first explosion came. Not artillery. Something else. Report! Southwest casemate. Internal detonation. Americans inside the wire. Weber grabbed his rifle and ran. What happened next would be studied in military academies for decades. Captain Anderson's team reached Bunker 3 at 11:45 hours. Reinforced steel door. Locked from inside. Anderson didn't waste time. He pulled 4 grenades, armed them, kicked off a ventilation cover, and dropped them down the shaft. Boom, 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 boom. 6 Germans stumbled out, hands up, coughing blood. Holmlund climbed onto the barracks roof, kicked off another vent, shoved a Bangalore torpedo inside. The blast blew out windows 50 yards away. But the breakthrough came at 1220 hours. Kovac's team reached casemate 2, the 150mm gun position. 3-foot-wide embrasure, gun barrel protruding. Chen whispered, "You see it?" "I see it." The embrasure was designed for the gun to fire out, not for weapons to fire in. But physics doesn't care about design. Kovac loaded the M6A1 rocket, sighted through the crude wire ring, aimed at the narrow opening. 20 feet, Chen breathed. Too close. It won't arm. Shut up and watch. He fired. The rocket flew straight, passed through the embrasure. Inside the casemate, 8 Germans, loading the 150mm, confident in their invulnerability. The bazooka rocket hit the far wall and detonated. Shaped charge. 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Copper jet traveling 25,000 feet per second. In an enclosed space. The blast wave killed everyone instantly. The overpressure collapsed lungs. Fragmentation turned steel into shrapnel. When American infantry breached the door 3 minutes later, they found a charnel house. Weber received the report at 12:35 hours. Casemate 2 destroyed, internal detonation, weapon unknown. Impossible. What weapon? They're saying, bazookas, sir. Weber's hand froze on his coffee cup. Bazookas can't. Those are anti-tank. How did they? Another runner burst in. Casemate 4 under attack. They're firing into the gun ports. Weber felt the walls closing in. 13:10 hours. Holmlund's Bangalore torpedo collapsed a tunnel entrance. 1,342 hours. Clecamp's satchel charges sealed off the southwest corridor. 14:05 hours. Kovac fired his 3rd rocket through a vision slit, Another pillbox went silent. 1,440 hours. Flamethrower teams pumped burning fuel down ventilation shafts. Germans evacuated, coughing, retching, straight into machine gun fire. 15 hours. Weber stood in the command post, reports piling up like autopsy findings. 12 pillboxes compromised. 3 casemates destroyed. 73 men dead. Tunnels collapsing. And the Americans hadn't used a single piece of heavy artillery. Just infantry. Engineers. And those damned tubes. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? His radio man looked up, face pale. Sir, they're not trying to break the fortress. They're turning it against us. Every defensive feature, vision slits, gun ports, ventilation, they're using them as entry points. Weber's legs gave out. He'd spent 6 weeks telling his men the bazooka was a joke. Now, the joke was on him. 1,600 hours. The evacuation order came. Not from Weber. From higher command, i.e. Fort Driant was untenable. German survivors fled through the tunnels, emerging into American ambushes. By 1,800 hours, the fortress fell silent. But this was just the beginning. October 7, 1944. German High Command, Metz. General Lieutenant Hermann Balck read the Fort Driant after-action report 3 times. Each time, his stomach sank deeper. They used what to breach the casemates? Bazookas, Herr General? The American 2.36-inch anti-tank rocket launcher. Balck knew the weapon. Every German officer did. Intelligence had assessed it in 1943. Adequate against light armor. Useless against fortifications. Effective range under 300 meters. Explain to me how a weapon with 3 inches of penetration destroyed positions with 48-inch concrete walls. The intelligence officer, pale and sweating, laid out photographs. They didn't penetrate the walls, sir. They bypassed them. Fired through gun embrasures, vision slits, any opening. The shaped charge detonated inside the casemate. In an enclosed space. In an enclosed space, the blast has nowhere to go, Balck finished. It rebounds, kills everyone inside. Yes, sir. And we designed these fortresses to keep explosions outside. Yes, sir. Balck threw the report across the room. Get me von Knobelsdorff, and start reinforcing every fortress within 50 kilometers. Weld plates over the embrasures. Seal the ventilation shafts. Retrofit every goddamned opening. Sir, that will take weeks. Then start now. But Balck was fighting physics with desperation. You can't retrofit 43 fortresses while under siege. And Patton wasn't waiting. November 8th, 1944. Third Army launches Operation Big Burn. 6 divisions, 250,000 men. Objective: envelope Metz, breach the west wall, push toward the Rhine. 20 corps on the left, 12 corps on the right, and in every infantry company, bazooka teams. But now, they knew the secret. November the 21st, 1944. Siegfried Switch Line, near Tettingen. The Siegfried Line wasn't one wall, it was layers. Dragon's teeth, concrete pyramids, 4 rows deep, designed to stop tanks. Anti-tank ditches, 12 feet wide, 8 feet deep. Pillboxes, steel-reinforced concrete, interlocking fields of fire, pre-sighted artillery coordinates. The Germans called it impregnable. Combat Command A, 10th Armored Division, arrived at dawn. Lieutenant Colonel Standish surveyed the defenses through binoculars. 6 miles of this. How many pillboxes? Intelligence estimates 200, sir. Lovely. But Standish had read the Fort Driant reports. Every officer had. Bazooka teams forward. Engineers prepare to breach the ditches. Tanks suppressing fire. Let's go hunting. At 7:30 hours, American howitzers opened up, not to destroy the pillboxes, but to blind them. Smoke rounds, high explosive to kick up dust. Under cover, infantry and bazooka teams advanced. By 0815, they'd reached the dragon's teeth. Engineers set shaped charges, not to destroy the concrete obstacles, but to blow pathways through them. Boom! Pathways cleared. Bazooka teams moved up. Pillbox 4 held 12 Germans. MG-42 machine gun, 50mm mortar, confident in their invulnerability. Private James Chen, yes, the same one, crept to within 30 feet. Kovac loaded, aimed at the narrow vision slit, 8 inches tall, 2 feet wide. Fired. The rocket flew true. Inside the pillbox, chaos. The shaped charge detonated against the back wall. Blast wave, overpressure, fragments. Every German inside died within 2 seconds. American infantry moved up, tossed in grenades to confirm the clearance, moved to the next target. By noon, Combat Command A had cleared 18 pillboxes. By sunset, 43. German defenders radioed in panic. The Americans have found the weakness. Request immediate reinforcement. There was no reinforcement. November 25, 1944. Saarlotern, Saarbrücken sector. 95th Infantry Division crossed the Saar River, established a bridgehead on the east bank. Ahead, the most fortified section of the west wall. Pillboxes every 50 yards. Bunkers converted from civilian buildings. Concrete foundations 4 feet thick. Colonel Robert Bacon, 379th Infantry, studied the defenses. 250 fortified positions in a 2-mile sector. This is going to be ugly. But the tactics had evolved. Bazooka teams didn't attack from the front anymore. They infiltrated. At night, teams crept between pillboxes, identified the firing slits, marked them with white phosphorus smoke. At dawn, assault teams hit them simultaneously. December 7th, 1944. Twaddle's 95th Division reports capturing 150 pillboxes and 1,250 fortified buildings. The cost? Heavy. The result? Unprecedented. Patton toured Saarlotern on December 14th. He stood in front of a captured pillbox, walls 3 feet thick, interior scorched black. "How did they take this?" he asked. Colonel Lewis pointed to the embrasure, a narrow gun slit, now jagged and torn. "Bazooka, sir, fired at point-blank range. Rocket went through the slit, detonated inside." Patton ran his hand over the scorched concrete. "And the crew?" "No survivors, sir." Patton nodded slowly. "Nearly all the houses I inspected were actually forts," he later wrote. "The enemy had converted them into strongpoints. Our men cleared them with bazookas, flamethrowers, and demolition charges." He paused, lit a cigar. "The Germans built these fortresses to withstand siege artillery. They never imagined someone would fire into them." December 15, 1944. German Situation Report. American infantry penetration tactics have rendered West Wall fortifications ineffective. Recommend immediate withdrawal to secondary defensive lines. Balk read the report with dead eyes. Since November 8th, the German First Army had lost 43,200 men. 37 fortresses captured or abandoned. The Americans were 10 miles from the Rhine. And the weapon bleeding them white? A $25 steel tube with coat hanger sights. 1,310,823 bazooka rockets fired in the European theater. Most against fortifications, not tanks. The Germans had designed their defenses around a paradigm. Walls strong enough to stop artillery. But the Americans didn't fight the walls. They fought the architects. December 8th, 1944. Fort Driant falls. Not by assault, by starvation. The Third Army had bypassed it, encircled Metz completely. The garrison inside Fort Driant, reduced to 110 men, surrendered without firing a shot. When American troops entered, they found scorch marks around every embrasure, every vision slit, every vent shaft. Weber was among the prisoners, thin, exhausted, haunted. A war crimes interrogator interviewed him December 12th. "You held this fortress for 73 days. Then you surrendered? Why?" Weber lit a cigarette with shaking hands. The Americans had given him lucky strikes. "We couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't fire the guns without exposing ourselves to bazooka fire. Every advantage we thought we had became a liability." "What do you mean?" "The concrete protected us from artillery, but it trapped us when you fired explosives inside. The tunnels gave us mobility, until you collapsed them with satchel charges. The embrasures gave our guns clear fields of fire, until you turned them into entry points for your rockets." He exhaled smoke. "We built fortresses to fight the last war. You brought weapons for the next one." The interrogator noted, "Subject displays profound psychological demoralization. Assessment: enemy doctrine rendered obsolete by tactical innovation." But the true reckoning wasn't in interrogation rooms. It was in the casualty reports. November to December 1944. Battle of Metz and Siegfried Line. German casualties: 43,200 men, 317 tanks, 47 fortresses lost. American casualties: 11,609 men, 187 tanks, 0 fortresses lost. The disparity defied conventional wisdom. Attackers usually suffer 3-to-1 casualties against fortified defenders. But these numbers were reversed. Why? Captain Leslie Skinner never lived to see it, but his weapon had done what no one predicted. The M1A1 Bazooka wasn't just an anti-tank weapon. It was an anti-fortification weapon when used unconventionally. December 20th, 1944. Interview with Sergeant Dale Cleckham, 7th Engineers. "How many forts did you personally breach?" Cleckham counted on his fingers. 6, maybe 7. Lost track. "What was the key?" "Understanding that concrete doesn't think. It just sits there. The Germans designed these forts to withstand force. So we didn't use force. We used precision." "Explain." "Look, you can fire 1,000 artillery shells at a pillbox. It'll absorb them. But fire one bazooka rocket through a 12-inch opening? Everyone inside dies. Not from the concrete failing, from the air inside turning into a pressure cooker. So the bazooka was more effective than artillery? Pound for pound? Absolutely. A 155mm shell weighs 95 pounds and costs $50. A bazooka rocket weighs 3.5 pounds and costs $2. I could carry 6 rockets. A howitzer crew could fire maybe 4 shells before repositioning. You do the math. But numbers don't capture the human cost. Private First Class Robert Holmlund, the man who kicked in ventilation shafts and dropped Bangalore torpedoes into German barracks, was killed October 3, 1944. He received a posthumous Distinguished Service Cross. His mother received a folded flag. Captain Jack Jerry, who radioed, "We have no men, our equipment is shot, we just can't go," survived Fort Driant by sheer luck. He returned home in 1946 with nightmares that never stopped. Captain Harry Anderson, who cleared bunkers with hand grenades and sheer audacity, took a machine gun burst to the chest December 11, 1944. Died before the medic reached him. Private Jimmy Chen lost his left arm to a Panzerfaust at Saarlouthern. Went home in January 1945, spent the rest of his life telling people he'd left part of himself in Germany. The bazooka saved lives, thousands of them. Without it, assaulting the West Wall would have required months of siege warfare, massed artillery bombardment, and casualty rates approaching World War I levels. Instead, small teams with improvised tactics cracked fortresses in hours. But it changed something deeper: doctrine. January 1945. U.S. Army Ordnance Department report. The M1A1 Bazooka has proven effective beyond original design parameters. 1,310,823 rockets expended in ETO. Estimated 70% employed against fortifications rather than armored vehicles. Effectiveness against pillboxes and bunkers substantially exceeds anti-tank role. Recommendation: redesign doctrine, emphasize fortress-busting tactics, increase production. The report landed on desks in Washington, Moscow, London. By 1950, every major army had developed shoulder-fired rocket launchers optimized for bunker busting. The Soviets built the RPG series. The Germans, West Germany, developed the Panzerfaust III. The British upgraded the PIAT. All of them traced lineage back to that moment in October 1944, when Danny Kovac fired a $25 steel tube through a gun embrasure and changed warfare forever. But the Germans never forgot. March 1945. Captured German training manual found in Berlin. American bazooka tactics. Threat assessment critical. The enemy has developed methods of employing man-portable anti-tank weapons against fortifications with devastating effectiveness. Vision slits, embrasures, ventilation, and access points are primary targets. Standard defensive doctrine is ineffective. Do not rely on concrete thickness. Do not assume enclosed positions provide safety. Countermeasures: weld armor plates over all openings. Install blast-proof ventilation systems. Eliminate straight-line tunnels. Zigzag all corridors. Position defenders away from embrasures. Maintain rapid evacuation protocols. Too little, too late. By March 1945, the West Wall was a memory. The Rhine was crossed. Germany was collapsing. And the weapon they'd mocked had become the one they feared most. April 15, 1945. Interview with General Lieutenant Hermann Balck, POW. What single American weapon surprised you most? Balck didn't hesitate. The bazooka? Not their tanks? Not their air power? Tanks we expected. Air superiority we anticipated. But a shoulder-fired tube that could turn our strongest fortifications into death traps? That we never saw coming? Why not? Because we designed for the battles we'd already fought. Heavy artillery, massed assaults, frontal attacks. The Americans designed for the battle that hadn't happened yet. Infiltration, precision, using our strengths against us. He leaned forward. You want to know the real genius? It wasn't the weapon. It was the audacity. Your soldiers looked at fortresses everyone said were impregnable and said, what if we don't try to break them? What if we just bypass the strength and exploit the weakness? And that defeated you? That defeated doctrine. That defeated assumption. That defeated the idea that concrete equals safety. He smiled bitterly. We built the Siegfried Line to stop armies. Your soldiers defeated it with squads. 1946. Private First Class Danny Kovac returns home to Cleveland, Ohio. He doesn't talk about the war much. When people ask what he did, he says, infantry, nothing special. But sometimes, late at night, he pulls out the photograph. October 1944. Somewhere in France. Him and Chen, sitting on a captured pillbox, bazooka resting between them, both grinning like idiots who just survived the impossible. Chen's in the photo with both arms. That's the version Kovacs keeps. 1952. The Korean War. M20 Super Bazooka. Upgraded, 3.5 inches, more powerful, becomes standard issue. Primary role, bunker busting. American troops use the same tactics. Infiltrate, find the openings, fire inside. North Korean and Chinese fortifications fall the same way German ones did. 1960s to 1970s, Vietnam. The M72 law replaces the bazooka. Lighter, disposable, same principle. Viet Cong bunkers, NVA tunnel complexes, all vulnerable to the same tactic. Find the weakness, exploit it with precision. 1991, Gulf War. Iraqi bunkers in Kuwait. Coalition forces use AT-4s and SMAWs, direct descendants of the bazooka. Same principle, same results. 2003 to 2020. Iraq and Afghanistan. Shoulder-fired rockets clear Taliban compounds, ISIS strongholds, insurgent fortifications. The doctrine, born in Metz, lives on in Fallujah, Kandahar, Mosul. Because the lesson isn't about weapons, it's about thinking. The Germans built fortresses assuming walls equal safety. The Americans proved that safety depends on doctrine, not thickness. Every fortress has openings. Every strength has a corresponding weakness. And sometimes, the underdog wins not by matching the enemy's strength, but by making that strength irrelevant. Oberleutnant Klaus Weber spent 6 weeks telling his men the bazooka was a joke. Then it turned his fortress into a tomb. Not because it was powerful, because it was used powerfully. 2024. Fort Driant still stands. The French army uses it for training. The scorch marks are still visible around the embrasures. The tunnels are sealed now, too dangerous. But guides tell the story to visitors. This fortress held for centuries. Then American soldiers with $25 steel tubes cracked it in 3 days, not by breaking the walls, by bypassing them. The final image, a rusted M1A1 Bazooka in the National World War II Museum, New Orleans. 54 inches long, 12 pounds empty. Beside it, a placard. M1A1 Bazooka, 1942 to 1945. Cost, $25. Fortresses destroyed, incalculable. Doctrine revolutionized. Forever. And underneath, in smaller letters, a quote from Patton. We expected to fight walls. They taught us to fight ideas.